Welcome back to the YouTube home for BamaOnLine.com. It is a Friday morning, June the 21st, 2024. Travis Reier alongside BOL Senior Recruiting Editor Andrew Bone. And of course, down there in the special center square, our publisher, Tim Watts. Guys, so much to talk about as we approach the end of June. And of course, what that means on the recruiting trail for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Seems like day to day right now, we're looking at official visitors of note. Big weekend coming up. But where I wanted to start things with you guys this morning is with Keelon Russell, the 2025 quarterback commit for Kalen DeBoer. Tim, it just seems like this guy's on a rocket ship right now in terms of his ascent as a prospect. And most recently, what we saw in Southern California is he's the MVP of the Elite 11 and sort of the ripple effect that could come from, again, this ascent for the Texas gunslinger.
I think we've already seen the ripple effect to some degree. These offensive linemen, have been piling up after him. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it was kind of set up nice to fall sort of like dominoes. And then you see the Texas five-star Lockett come in for a visit. So we're already seeing a ripple effect. But his ascent, I was kind of surprised when I first saw his film. That he was committed to SMU. I was kind of surprised. I mean, this is just nothing against SMU, who did a great job. I can't say it enough. Evaluation and getting him committed, but a very talented guy. You could see it right away. Very long. Alabama's got him measured on almost 6'4", so I think he's grown a little bit. And again, there's so much to like about him. I mean, there's no Bama bump. This guy's good. There's going to be a lot of schools regretting they probably didn't push harder for him, in my opinion.
What about it, Andrew? Similar to what you're seeing right now with Keelon Russell, and not just in terms of the commitments, but like we've seen with Kaliq Lockett here in the last few days, the five-star wide receiver from Texas making an official visit to Alabama. Things just seem to be falling in place.
Yeah, I mean, ever since Keelan committed to Alabama, we've seen him heavily recruit other players, whether it's on social media or he's telling us that he's talking to this guy or that guy. I think he put out a list right after he committed of guys that he was already in contact with, and then it talked about it at the Elite 11, guys that he's been speaking with, including his teammate DeCorian Moore, which I know Alabama fans are all excited about his teammate, who's a five-star wide receiver, but I think we're kind of a long way to go from there. But there's some other big targets that are out there, especially at the wide receiver position, including Kaliq Lockett, who we'll talk about, took an official visit to Alabama earlier this week. You got some other big targets that are in Texas, including Ty Haywood. So that Keelan would love to have a big five-star offensive lineman blocking for him from the state of Texas.
Yeah, it kind of could be the wall that Keelon built when this thing is all said and done at the offensive line positions. But Kaliq Lockett, as we talk about, Tim, has made his way to Tuscaloosa. And I know Joseph Hastings had an outstanding interview with Lockett for us. It's right now. You can find that at BamaOnline.com. But just from that report, and I guess what you and Andrew were able to gather over the last few days, sounds like Alabama knocked it out of the park in terms of that visit.
Well, you go from a 0% chance of landing him to you're in the ball game. Even if you're at 1%, you're increasing your stock. I think Coach Shepard, the wide receiver coach, we heard such great things about him when he was heading here. When we started making our calls and doing our research, the praise for him was universal. And now that you see him here, I mean, I think a lot of people saw on social the Travis Smith fire up pep talk. I mean, he's a guy, for a while, you don't hear many wide receiver coach you're going to run through the wall for, but if there is one, it's him. So you got a fighter's chance. I think you're watching Texas where he goes this weekend. Unbelievable playmaker, this guy. First time I really dug into his film was when he decided to come for a visit. Big time player. It kind of reminds me of a thicker Smitty, honestly. Goes up and gets it, catch radius. He's got speed right out, Texas guy, and all of that. But it's going to be a small wide receiver group. But I mean, they're always going to have room for a guy like that.
Andrew, Kaliq Lockett, as Tim noted, everything you're looking for at the wide receiver position. And you guys have talked about it too. Seems like Shep's pretty specific. Maybe not even so much just in terms of physical attributes, but makeup, intangibles, what he wants out of that position and out of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, you look at they already have Latzir Brooks already committed. He was a big target for them, right out the gate. Was contacted pretty much immediately when the staff arrived, and they really pushed hard for him. So they got Latzir Brooks on board. Now, you look back at last year's recruiting class with Ryan Williams and Amari Jefferson and Rico Scott, Alabama and Caleb Odom, who moved from tight end to wide receiver. You really weren't pushing for a big wide receiver class in this year's cycle. So we've been talking about it for a while. 2 to 3 wide receivers total. They have one. Still looking for maybe 1 to 2 more, maybe 2 more. We'll see. But bringing Kaliq Lockett in this past week was very significant because he wasn't a guy that we were talking about before. They've got some big guys, big targets that are going to be on campus this weekend. So it's going to be really fun to see kind of how this wide receiver class shakes out really over the course of the next few weeks, because it looks like, as we mentioned, Kaliq Lockett is going to Texas this weekend. He tweeted out that he's looking forward to announcing a commitment date shortly after that trip, and it looks like it could be coming down to Alabama and Texas for him.
And if you want more of this kind of information, a lot more of this, check these guys out right there at BamaOnLine.com. The Roundtable, our premium message board, is a great place to get all of the news, interact with Bama fans by the thousands. And right now, we've got that official visitor special, $1 for 1 month right now at BOL. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel right here, we'd appreciate it if you would go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Give us a like if you don't mind. A little thumbs up would help us out. And turn on those notifications. You'll get all of our YouTube content as it drops right here on the YouTube home for BOL. Guys, let's talk about that Wolf position too, because Alabama's had some interesting visitors the last couple of weeks, Tim. Talk about Dawson, Merritt. Talk about Justin Hill. Kind of in wait and see mode with both or either of those two edge standouts. What are your sort of thoughts on that situation as those guys continue to navigate the process?
Well, we put in a RPM, still trying not to call it our new name, a RPM in a prediction yesterday. I didn't know it was going to be that big a deal. Me and Andrew and Joseph, we're like, Nebraska fans are taking shots at us, and it got rowdy. I didn't understand, I got rowdy. I didn't understand why it got so rowdy, but I mean, we like where Alabama sits with Dawson, Merritt. Tip of the hat in Nebraska, because this really looked like a Bama lock pretty early on to us. I think we did not expect to be talking about Dawson heading into July. So Nebraska did a good job, but I think Alabama did a better job. I think Christian Robinson selling the program, the future, there's been some tweets. I think the decision's coming soon. How soon is always relevant to an adult. Soon's in the next 5 hours. To a kid, it's in the next week. But we do think he's narrowing down his decision, and we like where Alabama sits.
Yeah, what do you think, Andrew, as far as that situation is concerned? We talked about the linebacker position. Alabama, when it comes to inside guys, is almost full. I think we're going to talk about a guy that is still out there in a big visit coming up that Alabama would certainly take. But as far as the edge goes, is that kind of where it lines up right now with the two guys we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Tim. I feel like Alabama's done a great job there with Dawson Merritt, and talked to him a bunch over the course of the last few months. And really that relationship with Christian Robinson has been huge. And Christian Robinson's been terrific with Justin Hill as well, top 100 Wolf target out of Cincinnati. Had a great official visit this past weekend. We had a fantastic story on BOL this week with his mom, who's a big Alabama fan, and I think she would be committed to Alabama now if the decision was up to her. But Justin's going to take an official to Oregon this weekend. Then he's going to make a decision on July the 3rd. So that decision is going to be here before we know it. And it certainly looks like an Alabama-Ohio State battle. Ohio State's kind of been at the top of that list from the get-go, but Alabama has certainly done a terrific job there. Now, Alabama's only brought in 2 Wolf targets the entire month, Dawson Merritt and Justin Hill. So kind of waiting to see what both of those guys are going to do. And, that's what Alabama's waiting to see, before they really kind of go after anybody else at this position. They're waiting to see what happens with Dawson Merritt, Justin Hill, and they put themselves in a really good spot with both of those guys down this home stretch.
Yeah, our viewers in the chat here, the show chat, are anxious as well. Sam checking in. We appreciate it, Sam. He says, "Morning, fellas. I just committed. I committed to hitting that like button. That's the kind of commitment.
There we go.
That's the kind of commitment we're looking for, right, Tim?"
Absolutely. Thank you. We see all that. We love the fact that we show up now, because it used to be kind of quiet, but we show up now and there's a few people waiting on us. They're
Yeah.
holding their hand to that watch if we're a little bit late. So we appreciate all of it. Roll Tide, good morning. All y'all for being here. And like Billy Joel said, it's a pretty good crowd for a Friday. This is a popular show. I mean, this thing's gotten some lively views, and we appreciate all y'all for showing up, hanging out with us.
Absolutely. And now, guys, I want to ask you about some Crimson Tide targets that are going to be on the road this weekend. And Tim, I'm going to start with you with a tight end named Nick Townsen, who was at Alabama here recently on an OV. He's been to SC, he's been to A&M, I believe. Texas coming up, and then Harry Dalton, the running back from the West Coast, in the trip he's expected to make, or not much of a trip for him, I guess, this weekend. But those two guys, Tim, Nick Townsend, the tight end, and Harry Dalton, the running back.
The tight end position's probably been the biggest mystery for us to follow so far. They've had guys in. They had Olish from up in the Northeast. They've had other guys come in. They had Caleb Edwards from California come in this week. So they've had a lot. I don't think it's like a pressing issue for Alabama. I think they feel they can find guys even if it's in the portal. But Townsend's interesting. Had a good visit. Had a lot of feedback that he really liked Alabama, which we think is the case. But is going to Texas. I think Texas is going to be a team that's kind of all in on him. We're going to see if they go all in on him this week with that. Rev up the Lamborghinis, and he's a guy that's pretty wide open. We felt at one point that he actually was going to commit, and now it's just kind of we're in the waiting game to see what happens. But the Alabama staff likes him. 6'2", very athletic, but I think a lot of schools are still figuring out what to do with him. But still to be determined with him down the road, I think.
Yeah, Andrew, I may have gotten this one mixed up a little bit. I meant to ask you about Townsend and Dalton, but I'm going to ask you anyway about Ty Haywood, the offensive tackle, and Ivan Taylor, the safety.
Unlike Tim, I know everything about all the guys. So
right, so I'm not worried about it. I know
that's not even. He doesn't even know where Ty Haywood's going this weekend. So
I can't freeze you with the 3-2 curveball. I know you're going to be ready no matter what.
I don't know.
Andrew swinging that blooper ball they throw
kind of like Ron Burgundy. Whatever you put on that script, he'll read it. Whatever you put on that teleprompter.
With Ty Haywood, this is a 5-star offensive lineman out of Texas that we've been talking about, a little bit more since May the 31st official visit, because we didn't know where things stood with him, because he had never visited Alabama before that official. Oklahoma was very high on the list. He has not been back to Oklahoma for an official visit yet, and he's going out to Florida State this weekend, as far as we know. So, kind of waiting to see what Ty Haywood does. I think a decision's probably going to come sometime in July, but could come at any moment. I think we like where things are currently stand with Ty Haywood in Alabama. I think they've done a good job. Coach Kapilovic has done a tremendous job recruiting him. He was targeting him when he was out at Baylor, and that relationship kind of has continued through Alabama. And Haywood also grew up a big Alabama fan, so that doesn't hurt either. So we're watching Ty Haywood very closely. Alabama's done a tremendous job recruiting on the offensive line front. Jackson Lloyd commits earlier this week. Mike Carroll and Mal Waldrop 2 weeks ago. So it's going to be interesting to see how this offensive line class kind of unfolds over this next month, because as I've been riding this train for the last month and a half, 20 commitments by August. It's going to happen, and I think 5 of those pieces are going to be from the offensive line front.
You've been adamant. You've been very adamant about that, Andrew Bone, the 20-plus commitments by mid-August. So hard to argue with right now. As much as Tim, I know Tim would love to be able to argue with that. I don't think Tim can even argue with that. Right.
I only count December commitments. I don't worry about August commitments. I'm moving the goalpost. Shift.
Yeah, exactly. Get him on the left hash mark.
Now we're shifting it to 25.
Uh-huh. Yeah, shift. Andrew said 31 kids by August 1st. I remember that distinctly.
Yeah. But Travis, as you said earlier, Harry Dalton, another guy that we're watching pretty closely this weekend. Running back positions pretty interesting because Alabama has one commitment in Turbo Rogers. Has been committed since last summer. They've had some guys that have come in this month. Shakai Mills-Knight, A.K. Deer, Jamarian Morrow took an official visit with Alabama, Jordan Davison. And then they had Harry Dalton on campus last weekend, USC commitment out of Virginia. Now, he's been to Tuscaloosa prior to last weekend. He had received an offer from Alabama last summer. So that relationship with Robert Gillespie, the running backs coach, goes all the way back till then. And they've done a good job. They've really put themselves in that conversation, but he's been committed to USC since April. He's going to USC this weekend. So a lot of eyes are going to be on that visit, kind of see where things are after his trip back out to LA. Because if he comes out of that visit with USC this weekend, not solidifying things and not shutting it down, Alabama's going to have a real shot.
Guys, you ready to go quad box? Time to bring in the prodigy. Oof. Tim doesn't like it when I'm that complimentary, I think. But there he is, Joseph Hastings on a Friday morning. Joseph, how are you doing?
Doing exceptional. How about you all?
We're hanging in there. A lot of stuff to get into, a lot of action, and we love it. Absolutely. Right there with these guys at BamaOnLine.com. The roundtable, again, is where you need to be. $1 for 1 month right now as a part of our official visit special. And of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel right here. Hit the subscribe button. Maybe give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. Turn on those notifications. You'll get all of our YouTube content as it drops. Guys, I want to shift into looking ahead a little bit to this final weekend before the recruiting dead period. You know, there's a lot happening around the country. I don't know if you can attribute some of that to NIL. I think everything is in play, as we know, wild, wild west in some ways. But I wanted to start with you, Tim, and I'm going to go to Andrew and JoJo on this as well. What's been the biggest surprise for you as it relates to Alabama recruiting in the month of June? You pick one surprise this month. What would it be, Tim?
I think it's the hit rate of going from not often mentioned to the leaderboard, one of the leaders, if not getting a commitment for some of their top targets. Chuck McDonald is always going to jump out at me because we were very, very, not talking about him that much. A lot of USC smoke, some other schools. They bring him in, get him on campus, get him committed, cancels his other visit, shows up the next weekend for an unofficial to commit. We've seen that with Ty Haywood, not really talking about him a whole lot. Next thing you know, he's on campus. We kind of got him, Oklahoma was the leader. I mean, this is kind of a big weekend because he didn't go to Oklahoma last weekend. A lot of people just assumed that Ty was just going to flip over and go to Oklahoma this weekend, but he kept his FSU visit. So I think Alabama's in a good shape there. I think the fact that they are hitting such home runs on their visits, I think even the guys that don't choose Alabama, I think they've knocked the official visits out of the ballpark. And I think it's collectively that this is kind of like, it's a word I hate in this sentence, but in this way, but I think they're just a group of dudes. I think when you see them, they're able to sit and smoke a cigar or shoot pool or bowl or hang out or just kick their feet up on a desk. I think you feel that from Kalen DeBoer, Courtney Morgan, down to the people in the staff, the back office that were there with Saban and who came on with Kalen. I think they're just really at home on these officials.
NIL has definitely stepped to the forefront with a lot of this, as we know, but you still have to create a vibe, right? You still have to create a sense of culture and what guys feel comfortable within and what they can anticipate if they become a part of your program. What about you, Andrew? What's your surprise for the month of June?
I think it has to be the number of commitments. 7. I mean, Alabama's had 7 commitments since
you called for 20 plus.
I was about to say you called for 20 if we didn't get 7.
I did call for 20 plus, but the problem is, I was thinking they were all going to come in July and early August because that's kind of what we've been seeing over the course of the last few years with these official visits being able to happen in the summer months. We tend to see all these kids take all of their visits, 4 or 5 visits, and then sit down, make a decision during that dead period. That's what we've been used to over the course of the last couple of years. And it seems like there's 2 or 3 commitments almost every week now. So it's been impressive for Alabama. They've done a great job thus far. I think that This is obviously a very big weekend for Alabama. They could end up with some additional commitments from this group, 12 official visitors. So there's some guys in that group that we feel like Alabama's got a strong chance to land. But obviously, we're going to also be watching some guys that are visiting elsewhere, because these are big visits for other schools this weekend as well, to potentially try to get these guys that might be leaning towards Alabama to get a little bit more towards their side.
What about it, JoJo? Give us your surprise for the month of June.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of piggyback off what Bone said, talking about the number of commitments in the month of June, and then take it a step further and saying that these prospects who committed ended up canceling their visits elsewhere, their official visits elsewhere. That was, a little bit surprising to me that, how much momentum Alabama was able to generate. That's a good comment. How much momentum Alabama was able to generate on the visits themselves, get the kids to commit during the visits, as we've seen in the case with Jackson Lloyd, Michael Carroll, others who told Keelon, DeBoer and company in person that they were committing and then canceling their visits elsewhere. Michael Carroll canceling official visits to Penn State, the legacy school, Michigan too. And then Jackson Lloyd canceling the official visit to USC, Kon Russell canceling Florida, Oregon. List goes on and on. Chuck McDonald too. I mean, it's just been really impressive to see not only Alabama get them in the fold quickly, but also have them cancel those visits elsewhere.
And with that, I got another one for you guys. Most impressive recruiting win for the Crimson Tide this month. Of all these commitments that we've seen in the last month, which, in your opinion, is most impressive? Tim, I'm going to start with you with that one.
I want to say Jackson Lloyd, but it's kind of low-hanging fruit. I think it's Michael Carroll. I think that was looking like a bad. I know a lot of teams battled hard for him. Not that they didn't for Jackson, but Bama was really good shape from January on with Jackson. I think big because you knew you had a chance to get Jackson Lloyd. So you get Michael Carroll. He's a big-time guy. I don't think a lot of people even caught on to how good he is. His film's amazing, both sides of the ball. And I think that when you get, because you kind of expect to get a few guys. We expected Mal. We expected Jackson in a lot of ways. Still had to go through the process. But Carroll, we knew they were in good shape with. But to get him, again, canceled visits, locking down, huge fan, recruiting and all that. To me, I think, and look, I'm old school. You can't get enough big dudes. You can't get enough big dudes on the offensive line and defensive line when you recruit. I don't care about stars, even though Michael Carroll's highly ranked. I think you get big dudes because you win games with big dudes. So, and I think he's one of the best in the nation.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that assessment. What about you, Andrew? Biggest win for the Crimson Tide so far this month on the recruiting trail?
Biggest win. I mean, it's got to be Keelon Russell. I mean, that's a huge win for Alabama. I mean, even though you flipped them from SMU, there was a lot of schools that were coming hard after him. I mean, Oregon, Florida. He took a visit to Texas in the spring. So there were some schools that were really starting to come after him pretty hard, even though he had committed to SMU back in the fall, and his stock just continues to rise throughout the entire year. And we felt like Alabama had a chance to potentially flip him. And he took a visit to Ole Miss, took an official to Ole Miss, and there was some confidence coming out of Oxford after that trip. He was going to flip to. I think we even saw some predictions that flowed in for the Rebels. But then he makes it to Tuscaloosa. Everything went extremely well. And he even said leading up to the visit, he said, the staff had been communicating with him 3-4 times a week, really showing him, how much they wanted him, needed him. And once they made that offer on April the 24th, I mean, he was their guy. That was the guy they really focused in on. Didn't offer anyone else throughout the entire spring, wanted to get a decision from him before they really moved to the next guy. And they were able to close that one pretty quickly. He canceled all the visits, and now he's been a tremendous recruiter for Alabama. Helped get Kaliq Lockett to consider Alabama and take an official visit, and now Alabama's right there in the strongly in the mix for Lockett heading into his final official visit.
What about it, JoJo? Give us your biggest win for the Crimson Tide in June.
Yeah, so I was a little bit nervous about going third here because I thought my first pick would definitely be taken by now. But yeah, it's Chuck McDonald. Going into this month of recruiting for Alabama, he was one of those ones that we were talking about, just kind of wait and see how that first official visit to Alabama would go. But I'm honestly, even now reflecting back on it, really surprised that he canceled those officials to Georgia, USC, Oregon, and made that decision as quickly as he did. Even with that momentum with Alabama, I thought it may have played out in a little bit of a similar way as Ty Haywood, where you see that momentum, start to come in after the weekend and the weeks leading after. And then, maybe a visit or two taken elsewhere, and then a decision maybe potentially made in late June or sometime in July. But for McDonald to go into the fold as soon as he did, took 2 visits to Alabama, ended up taking an official the weekend after. Top 100 guy at a school like Mater Dei. Can't get enough of guys from Mater Dei, as Alabama fans know. And it really kind of goes to show the impact that the players have had in this month of June. Xavier Brown, Damani Jackson pitching in there, recruiting him. So yeah, that would be my pick.
Let's talk official visit weekend, the big one coming up to close the month of June for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Guys, I got 2 players each for each of you that I want you to outline for us as we look at this list of a dozen official visitors for the weekend. And Tim, I'm going to go Micah DeBose and your guy at the inside linebacker position. Everybody's guy, really, right? In Ty Jackson. Give us something on both those guys.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to hear what happens with Ty this weekend, just because it's been so quiet. He's a very quiet person by nature. College coaches say he just doesn't say a lot when you're talking to him. On3, he has him top 20 in the country. I think they're ahead of the curve with him. He's a big hitter. The thing about him as a player, real quick, is that he's not even quite 200 pounds, but when he hits you, it looks like Reuben Foster. He's got leverage. He drives through you. Obviously one of the most highly recruited guys in the country. You've got Alabama's visit coming up. Georgia's had a lot of talk around them. So we're going to see what Alabama can do, because Alabama's always felt they were in this. They've always felt Kane Womack has done a good job. Others have chipped in. They've did a good job. So this is that week to see if they can hit that home run. And then Micah DeBose, we've talked about him so much. He almost feels like a commitment, because he's the story that kind of answered the question, can this staff recruit? Yeah, they can. They had to really make up some ground. The guy's been committed to Georgia. It's a long list. Committed to Georgia, leaning to Auburn, leaning to LSU, committing to LSU. And here he is coming in uncommitted to his visit this weekend to Tuscaloosa. Really good job by Coach Cap and Courtney Morgan. And we're really watching him closely to see what happens this week.
Andrew, what about Derek Meadows and Dijon Lee? I know Dijon's a guy that you've talked a lot about here on the program, the corner from Southern California. Give us a little bit of update on those 2 guys.
Yeah, I mean, Derek Meadows, 6'5", 195-pound wide receiver that Alabama has recruited for a long time. I mean, this wasn't a guy that Coach Shep and Coach DeBoer started recruiting when they got to Alabama. They had been recruiting him since they were at Washington. So that relationship goes all the way back then. And they've done a great job there. They've put themselves in a position where they are one of the top 2 or 3 schools on Derek Meadows' list, and they get the last official visit. Now, Notre Dame has been considered the heavy favorite for him for a long time. I think it's probably more because he's been there the most. I think he's taken 4 visits to Notre Dame, and this is only going to be his second trip to Alabama. But as we've kind of seen this month, it only takes 1 visit to be able to win a recruiting battle, and they've done a great job there. I expect him to have a terrific trip this weekend, and we'll kind of see what happens with Derek after the weekend visit. And then Dijon Lee, I mean, this is another guy that has been on Alabama's recruiting board for a long time, stems back to Coach DeBoer, Courtney Morgan being at Washington. He took a visit to Washington last year when they were there, and the interest was very high once they get to Alabama. He even said back in January, I think we had an interview with him, Joe had an interview with him back in January, that Alabama was going to be in his top 3 no matter what, just because of the relationship that he had with Coach DeBoer and Courtney Morgan and the staff. And he had never visited Alabama before. Now he's coming back this weekend for the 3rd trip since March. So this is a big weekend. It's been an Alabama-Georgia recruiting battle. Even though there's been some other schools that he's visited this month, Washington, Texas A&M, it's coming down to Alabama and Georgia. And he took a visit to Georgia this past weekend. Alabama has been trending in the right direction for the last month or 2, as we've noted a few times on BOL. So can they close the deal this weekend? He's got a big decision coming up next Friday on June the 28th. We don't expect him to change that date. We kind of think he's going to stick with it. But as of right now, it's Alabama certainly looking to close the deal this weekend with a 5-star corner, 6'3.5", 200 pounds. I met with him in Nashville at the On3 Elite event a few weeks ago, and he's every bit of 6'3", so that's a big corner, and certainly somebody that Mo Linquist hopes to make a big impression on this weekend.
Yeah, I think I saw a tweet last night of Dijon bowling with Zabian Brown, and he's so long. Dijon is. It looks like he could hand the ball to the pins. Just kind of unfurl it down the lane and just hand it to that top pin. But tell us also, JoJo, as we talk about this week's official visitor list for the weekend, wide receivers stand out and also big guys. And I'm going to give you one of each. I'm going to give you Caleb Cunningham and then Josiah Sharma. Give us something.
Yeah, and on that bowling picture from Dijon, we didn't tweet out the video because it went straight into the gutter. But yeah, I mean, he is, he does have that length like Bone talked about, and really good corner. I got to see him in person at Battle Miami. But Caleb Cunningham, out of Mississippi, he had an interesting, recruiting process with Alabama because during that coaching change, he wasn't going to put Bama in his top 12. Jamarcus Shepard visited him in January. He's immediately sold him on the Crimson Tide's future and direction, especially with the use of wide receivers. Got him on campus in March, and they have this pivotal last official visit ahead of the recruiting dead period. And I say pivotal because after every single visit, he's spoken very highly of each of these programs that he's taking officials to: Auburn, Florida, Tennessee, and Alabama gets one right before the dead period. Look, obviously, with how fluid he's been in his recruiting process, it probably benefits Bama's pursuit for him to make a decision like sometime during that dead period. He's maintaining that he's planning on doing so after the season. But once again, interested in hearing the returns from him after getting on campus and being around the staff. And then with Josiah Sharma, just another example of this Alabama staff here: Courtney Morgan, Kalen DeBoer, at Washington, having a strong evaluation early on. They offered him back in May, got him committed in early January before the coaching change. And if you recall too, Jackson Lloyd was offered in June too, and this is before they blew up in the rankings, became top 100 prospects on 3. Just solid evaluations by the staff. They were able to get Sharma on campus in back-to-back months, February, March, and April, which is pretty impressive for someone who's out of California, and then getting that last official visit from him. So, Alabama is, really battling there, doing an exceptional job of recruiting him. And those are two guys definitely to watch this weekend, just in terms of seeing how those returns come from the visit.
Guys, we got one of those $10 chat contributions. I still don't know exactly where the $10 goes, but Chance, man, appreciate that.
I think it was Chance last time.
Thank you, Chance.
Yeah,
Chance, you are number one.
Well, I figured
we love all you guys, but Chance, we don't even know how that works, but thank you. Chance says we appreciate it. We appreciate all you guys for being here. We appreciate all you guys for being here, and you gals, you girls. Y'all do a great job. Y'all represent well on the round table, and y'all take no business from anybody. But if you get a chance, give us a like and subscribe. Still trying to catch Georgia. Y'all can help us do that. That should be our motivation, and we want to hit 10,000. But thank you, Chance.
Yep, we are rolling past 9,000 here very, very soon, with 10,000 on the immediate horizon. Guys, let's talk summer camps, because kind of lost in all. It used to be the biggest sort of news event of the summer in terms of recruiting, because you didn't have all the official visits in June and the commitments that were coming from those, but they are still rolling on. Andrew, I wanted to start with you on this topic because it isn't just the official visitors for 2025 that'll be in town. It'll be a very impressive group of 2026s and beyond. And I wanted to ask you about the number one quarterback prospect for a class or so ahead in Faison Brandon, and kind of what else you're expecting from these upcoming camps.
Final football camp of the summer is on Saturday, so looking forward to that. It's been, the whole summer has been kind of geared towards the underclassmen as far as summer camps, 26s, 27s. even some 28s that we've seen receive offers. But they're going to have a couple big names that are going to be on campus this weekend that haven't visited yet this summer, including Faison Brandon, who is the #1 quarterback in the country in the 26th class from North Carolina. That's a kid that has visited Alabama before. I think this is his third trip to Tuscaloosa. He visited last summer, also visited in the spring. One of the first guys that they offered back in, I think it was February 1st or 2nd. And Alabama's been on him ever since. They really like him a lot. Tennessee's been a top school on his list. He's taken some other visits like the Florida State, LSU, NC State, but has a really good relationship already with Nick Sheridan. Tavis Sanders, who's Alabama director of recruiting, worked at NC State for a couple of years and has been recruiting Faison Brandon since his freshman year. So there is a relationship there. We'll just kind of have to wait to see how the visit goes this weekend. But quarterback's going to be a pretty interesting position for 26 because Alabama had a lot of ground to make up for in 25, and they were able to get the Elite 11 winner on board. So what are they going to do in 26? We're still kind of waiting to find out. But we saw some new offers extended this week, and not many guys have received offers thus far in the 26 class at that position.
Yeah, JoJo, you're up next where those 2026 quarterbacks are concerned. And beyond Brandon, as Andrew said, Alabama has offered a few other guys, I guess, here in the last few days. And just wanted your thoughts on those prospects and kind of where they rank, where they sit when you look at this early look to 2026.
Yeah, so one of them was Ryder Lyons, quarterback out of Folsom High School, same high school that Josiah Sharma, who we talked about before, goes to. And it's interesting because I spoke with their recruiting coordinator back in May, and Alabama had sent out staff members to go see Josiah Sharma, and they also, inquired about Ryder as well. So he's been on the radar for a little bit now ahead of this offer. Obviously dish out the offer to him. He's number 11 prospect overall in the class of 2026, number 3 quarterback, number 2 in the state of California. So, highly ranked kid at the position. We'll just wait to see if he's able to get on campus, potentially for maybe a late July visit. We're working on connecting with him, seeing when he plans on visiting Alabama. Obviously, tough to get out to Tuscaloosa during the season of how far away it is, but we'll see if a visit's set up. Bama also offered Jonas Williams out of Illinois, number 8 quarterback, top 100 kid in the class of 2026. And, with these new offers at the position, it's obviously exciting. Quarterback is a priority position, in every single cycle. Obviously Keelon Russell grabbed the headlines this week, but we'll be waiting to see if there's any visits scheduled on those guys' ends in the future.
Yeah, Tim, the importance of building these relationships right now when you talk about 2026s and specifically the quarterback position and maybe getting an earlier commitment from that spot in 2026 and say what you got with Keelon Russell here for 2025. Although I guess you could look at it and say, look, Keelon was late enough that you're going to have maybe some more burn even into 2025 than you would have had Keelon Russell committed, say, a year ago for the 2025 class. If that makes any sense, Tim.
I think it's important to get the right quarterback. I don't think it's important to get the quickest quarterback. I think Alabama's history of guys flipping and ending up with Bryce Young and Jalen Hurts and a lot of that has shown us that getting the guy is the most important thing. I mean, obviously, if you can get a big name, 5-star lock guy, you want to do it, but there's just not a lot of those. We see them stock drop all the time. Keelon, we loved him from the moment we saw him. Alabama did their due diligence. I mean, they chased him, watched him, did all the things they could before offering him, and they watched another quarterback, a bunch of other quarterbacks who were committed. Obviously, I think the only biggest name, Juju Lewis, is the only one. Well, he's actually a commitment. I was about to say the only one not committed is Juju Lewis, who is actually committed. So I think the key is to get your guy, which is what I think Alabama did. I don't think when you're a coaching staff, you can worry about, oh, he's committed to SMU. Oh, he's a 3-star, because that was then, this is now. And now he's pushing into that 5-star discussion. He's an Elite 11 MVP. And more than that, we said this earlier on, one of the things I loved the most about him was there's a lot of that people didn't factor in. There's a lot of street cred for being one of the best, if not the best quarterback in Texas on one of the best teams, if not the best team. There's a lot of street cred that goes with Keelon. You can see people respect him, like him. These kids know each other.
Absolutely. No doubt about that. And With that, guys, want to get into some final thoughts from you for this upcoming weekend, or just some of the stuff that you have on your radar, a player you may have on your radar. And Andrew, I'm going to start with you in that regard. Give us one for the road.
Yeah, so I think defensive line recruiting is very important this weekend because Alabama's going to have some big defensive line targets that are going to be in Tuscaloosa. I think 4 or 5 total defensive linemen on campus. A lot of people interested to see what kind of happens with Justice Terry, 5-star defensive tackle that decommitted from USC the other day. Set up a quick official visit to Alabama. Does Alabama have a realistic shot with him? I think we'll know after this weekend. And I know everybody keeps asking that. Everybody thinks he's going to Georgia, and there's been a lot of predictions in favor of Georgia. And, hey, you know what? I would probably predict Georgia right now too, because he's been there a couple of times. He's been committed there for over a year. But Alabama's at least going to get a shot. They're going to get him on campus. Freddie Roach has been recruiting Justice Terry since his freshman year. Now, this is going to be his first visit to Alabama since Kalen DeBoer took over. He was supposed to visit back in the spring, did not end up making it over there, committed to USC instead around that time, and kind of shut things down. But now he's back on the open market. We'll see kind of how things shake out with Alabama this weekend. But as we've kind of seen with all these official visits this month, they've been going pretty freaking well. So they could really make a big move with Justice this weekend. We'll just have to kind of wait to see how it goes.
And there you see it right there on your screen, an update from Andrew Bone in his latest update for us at BamaOnLine.com, or one of them anyway. I think we've got top 5 to watch for commitments also right now at BamaOnLine.com. But Alabama getaway, I love that. I love that headline. I think you did that one with me in line.
I did it for you.
Yeah. Figured that was a Grateful Dead reference for me. Love it. But you're going to find an update on Justice Terry and all kinds of great info in that update and others. The roundtable, the posts we have there for you, our premium message board, that's a big part of it. Absolutely. So much more right there with us at Bama Online. What about it, JoJo, before we wrap up with our publisher, Tim Watts? Give us one of yours for the road here on a Friday.
Let's go to the other side of the trenches. Offensive line, Micah DeBose. He's somebody that, we've talked about, a lot recently, just in terms of his increased interest in Alabama, getting on campus in April, May, and then earlier this month in June, which I think is a kind of a sneaky good visit following the heels of his LSU official visit for Alabama to get him on campus. I was exchanging messages with his mom during that trip. They did a pretty in-depth visit experience. It wasn't just stopping by Tuscaloosa and leaving after a couple hours. They did meetings, campus tours, meeting with academics, advisors. So it was a pretty in-depth visit. Now that you've got the final official visit before the dead period comes up, and really interested in seeing if a decision timeline is set after this. He's been pretty adamant, throughout this month, throughout the past few weeks, that he doesn't have a timeline set, but this momentum going in favor of Alabama and the official visit coming up, would be interested to see if he locks in a date shortly thereafter. So he'd be the one that I would pay attention to this weekend.
There you go from JoJo. What about Tim Watts here? What about your final thought, Tim?
My thoughts are the Alabama staff has really hit home runs in how they've handled not only the June official visits, but all the work that went into April to get these June visits set up. I mean, there was a lot of work in April where we were covering triple-digit visitors. While, again, you can't stress enough, this was like a first date. They were getting to know their team in spring, trying to figure that out. They had so much going on. Feasting in May, had a lot of guys. The official visitors list have been amazing, but if you look at the unofficial visitor list, it's even more impressive, which set up these officials. These guys probably need a break. They've got one more weekend. We will see some dominoes fall, I think, after this weekend to get to Andrew's 20. Have me rooting for decommitments just so he's wrong. But we will see a busy week after, I'm guessing, next 10 days. But these coaches, they did a tremendous job. That's my general thoughts, is that I don't care who, the most optimistic fan in the world did not expect the last weekend in June with official visitors for Alabama to have the number 3 recruiting class, a brand new staff, and not only number 3 recruiting class, but a lot of positive momentum. So tip of the hat to how these guys handle it, because I know all of us were curious what would happen. And again, it's 5 months after he's been hired, 5 or 6 months, we're coming on that window. and they did just an exceptional job of setting this program up for success in the future.
It seems to be very much headed in that direction. And as always, guys, great stuff right here on the YouTube channel for BamaOnLine.com. Again, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please take the time to do so right now. Hit that subscribe button. Hit us with a thumbs up if you don't mind. A little like would be greatly appreciated. Turn on those notifications. You'll get all of our YouTube content as it drops. But again, in-depth coverage throughout the weekend, throughout the foreseeable future from the BamaOnLine.com staff.
It started last night. There's
Yeah.
we found out that our boy Justice Terry likes Crocs. I'll never quite understand the Crocs, but he's kicking them on his way to
I
T-Town.
mean, it's kind of like cargo shorts, you know.
No, there's
Just
nothing
don't
like
get
one's
it.
plastic, one's classic. There's two different. So his stuff starts last night. It'll be going on this morning. So social, we'll have a great thread where we drop in all the stuff. There'll be a lot of activity and fun stuff happening. But
No,
great job by the staff so far.
no doubt about it. Guys, again, thanks and look forward to the continued coverage right there with us at BamaOnline.com. So for Andrew Bone, Joseph Hastings, Tim Watts, I'm Travis Reier, thanking you once again for joining us. And until next time, so long, everybody.